the big question I have you betaed yet?
I have not yet. I'm very close to doing so
Okay.
on my personal iPhone SE.
Okay.
I would be a lot less close if I only had one phone, but having the iPhone 8 from work and the iPhone SE personally,
Yeah.
it just feels like a lot less of a hit. I mean, if there's an app that won't run on the beta, I'm not just totally SOL.
What's interesting about this, though, is that you're basically saying that your SE, the love of your life, isn't really your primary phone because you would never put a developer's beta on your primary phone.
Well, I don't. It is. I mean, it is my primary phone, but
just by beta standards, doesn't seem that way.
Just barely. I mean, I go back and forth between them all the time, and really, like my phone, whichever one I'm using, it just and battery statistics will bear this out, and then screen time statistics soon will bear this out even more. I did find out, speaking of screen time and follow up, that every device hooked up to your Apple ID or verified with your Apple ID, you'll be able to look at the usage of it on every one of your devices. So off of my phone, I'll be able to look at my wife's phone and all my kids' iPads and my iPad, and so it'll all be there, accessible from any one of your devices. You can look at.
Will you be able to break it down? Like,
yes.
Okay, so it's not just like cumulative stats.
You can select one.
Okay.
And look at each one. I think that'll be nice.
Yeah, that's interesting because I guess it's whatever you're using as your primary iCloud account, right? Because like me and Brittany, she has a iCloud account, but we share my iCloud account for purchases for iTunes Store stuff. So I probably wouldn't be able to see hers because of how
right. I think it's just whatever you're using to sync iCloud data with. So that'll be nice. But anyways, we'll get screen time statistics, and screen time statistics will bear out that my phones run Overcast audio into my ears with AirPods is what their main function is.
True.
So it doesn't really. I tend to use the SE while I'm working because then I can use my watch, which is hooked up to my SE, to skip ads. And that's the main reason that I do that.
Yeah. You handed me your SE earlier to show me a tweet, and it's so crazy how small that phone is in your hand. Like it's been the iPhone 5 since I've had a 4-inch phone. So you forget what that feels like.
It's a great feeling.
Yeah. I couldn't remember what's that feature you can do where you can like turn is like reachability, or what do they call that?
There's no reachability.
Well, I know there's not on the SE, but I needed it yesterday and I couldn't remember how to activate it.
On your 10?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you have it turned on, then you just swipe down on the home indicator.
Okay. I thought I had it turned on and I was trying to do that, but it wasn't working.
You got to swipe it down in the right way, and it's
it's tricky there, yeah.
Especially if you only do it every once in a while. If you do it often enough, like as I was sitting in the Apple store doing it, I mean, I could get pretty good at it.
You've been practicing?
A little bit.
Other follow-up, we've gone public. So this is not just a thing that we're doing anymore. It's out there. People have actually listened to it. And when I say people, I mean a small group of people, not a large group of people, but more than I think we would have expected. So
gotta start somewhere.
We've been getting feedback, which has been nice. Some of it has not been so nice, but to be fair, we did know about the other. Well, I didn't. You knew about the other show.
I didn't know about it until soon after.
Oh, after we had come up with the name, because you went Googled it.
I didn't know about it.
Well,
And I didn't even think about Googling for it.
There's so many.
Afterwards.
There's thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there. Like, you're not going to come up with a unique name anymore.
Well, and it really reveals that podcasting is getting to the maturation point of things are going to have the same name and not be the same thing. I mean, movies
Right.
obviously do that. There
Yeah.
are tons of movies called X, Y, or Z. There are tons of, I mean, there's songs obviously that are called exactly the same thing, albums that are called exactly the same thing, bands that will have the same name. So
song names. Yeah. And from what I understand from this person's tweet, that tweeted at us, you can go find it yourself if you want to see it. Our shows are very different apparently based on that tweet. So, yeah. So I guess I kind of apologize, but not really because nobody
I
owns
also
the name.
think it's easy to tell apart a podcast with 300 episodes versus a podcast with 3 episodes.
With 3 episodes. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, this is episode 3, but the numbering kind of throws me off because it's really the 4th episode we've recorded because we did have an episode 0. So, but yeah, we're public. It's been fun to share it with people and for people to just yesterday I was walking through the office and talking to someone in a different area, different department. And they were like, I'm learning so much about my phone. I didn't even know I could do these things. And I was like, okay. And they're like, because I've been listening to your podcast. And I'm like, well, awesome. That's great, but also weird because this was never meant to be really consumed. This is just all the things that we want to talk about that we can't talk about anymore because we're not in the same office.
Hey, I'm all for it. The more the merrier.
So others save it for the show with almost 300 episodes. We're small potatoes. You got no competition here. Hey, and congrats on getting close to 300. Yeah, so we talked. Gosh, it feels like we got off on our cycle last week. So, which by the way, I feel like you want to start recording much earlier than I'm capable of recording most times when we record. Last week, I was all ready to go, man. I got those kids down fast, and I was ready to get here, and then we couldn't make it work, and I got sad. And that's when I knew that, hey, this is something fun that we're doing, because I felt kind of bummed about it. Luckily, not much has changed in a week, and we can still have the same show we were going to have then, but
for sure,
there have been a few things that I want to talk about this week before we get into our topic of the show, but because when we talked after WWDC, one of the questions I asked you based on the features, that were announced in watchOS 5, did they tip their hand any to what might be coming with hardware in a Series 4? And I had this conversation with someone else the week after we recorded, and got this story here coming out that no buttons and improved GPS. I mean, the no buttons thing, it's kind of true, but not entirely true, right? Because they're talking no buttons in the sense of your iPhone 8 doesn't have, a home button, but it really does, but it doesn't, that type of thing. So the thought here is that they would move to kind of that similar model of having virtual buttons, which I'm not really sure what you gain from doing something like that on such a small device. I mean, I guess every little millimeter helps. And certainly it probably helps with even further waterproofing, but gosh, the Series 3 is so waterproof as it is. I really don't know how excited I should get about a Series 4 this fall, but I know I'm going to probably be in the market for one.
Absolutely. I will be as well. Yeah, the strangest part of these rumors to me is the bigger screen.
Yeah.
Along with the new design. I don't really see that. I wouldn't really want the watch to be bigger. I don't think there's anything that
it already kind of feels big to me, but then I see people with actual big watches. I mean, this is more of a thing that you see typically with men who have these just gargantuan watches. I couldn't imagine. I had a hard enough time when I got the Apple Watch just whacking it into stuff as I'm walking around, partially because I'd never really worn a watch consistently before. But I couldn't imagine, I don't know, then you get into the whole weight issue. And at this point, I'm so used to how it feels that I could see that being something that would be more noticeable to me than going from a 4-inch phone to a 4.7-inch phone. But I don't want to get into that. I don't want to go down that road. The conversation I was having with my friend last week about the watch situation, because he's probably also going to be in the market soon for a new watch. He's got a Series 1, or I think it's maybe Series 2, but it's got a crack on it. So he's getting to that point. Are we going to see a form factor change? And if we do, would you still have, basically, would you have two form factors now? Like, will we see a rounded watch face, but also still have, the classic Apple Watch design?
Yeah, they're not going to have a rounded display.
You don't think so?
No, because they would have to completely design the interface for a rounded display while also completely designing the interface for the rounded rect, or actually just straight up rectangle, I do believe, that the actual display is. So I don't see that happening.
It's not like, having an iPhone 8 display and an iPhone 10 display, because they're basically the same. I mean, there's differences, right, in the visuals of the software just because of how the screen's laid out, but they're basically still rectangles. So it's not like, trying to smush a little square into a circle. I get what you're saying. I never had really thought about that, but that does make sense.
I think internally it would be a lot harder to put as much technology inside of a round watch.
Well, just the screen alone. I mean,
screen alone is going to be expensive to cut that, and I mean that whole piece and how that process works. But it just seems to me like a lot of your components they have sharp edges. I mean, your processor has sharp edges.
Yeah.
This, that, and the other has sharp edges. So you can pack that in to a rectangular watch a lot more easily than you could a round watch.
Even if it was slightly bigger, it would still, because of the way, what's the adage? Trying to force a square peg into a round hole. You still probably don't gain a whole lot from that. And I mean, yeah, that would be such a large scale change. I feel like people want it, right? And people are clamoring for it, but that's a lot to do, and then still have your older models too. Like you were saying, I wasn't even thinking of the software aspect of how radically different the design would probably end up looking on the software.
I'm not sure why people clamor for it. I guess because traditionally to a watch, it'd be nice. Like if you use your Apple Watch predominantly as a watch, then it'd be great for it to be round. But for me, I really use my watch predominantly, other than music and podcast controls, probably for reading notifications.
Yeah.
And for reading text, a rectangle is so much better than a rounded display. I mean, there are comical depictions on the internet that you can look up of just how little text you can put on a round display, because you're going to put text in straight lines.
Right.
So there's a really small window.
How do I justify this thing?
In the middle of a circle where you can put text.
I'm longing for the fall, mostly for the Series 4, but also I don't want to buy a new watch, but like I just feel like, this Series 0, it's done its job. It's carried me along well. I've loved it. Never had a watch before that I, like a serious watch that I would wear every day. But man, I don't want to spend that much money again, but you know what? It's done its job, little buddy. Thank you. Thank you, Series 0. You're not taking me to the next OS release, but you've done well.
I'm excited for a faster watch, a fast watch, I should say.
Yes,
straight up fast.
Right. Because even like Series 1, the Series 3 is like 70, 80% faster than the Series 1. I was explaining that to another friend, having a watch conversation last week about, because he was thinking about, he had an Apple Watch, a Series 0, but he exercises a lot, rides bikes a lot, and he ended up going back to Garmin. because it had better health tracking and all that, and way better battery. I mean, it lasts like 2 weeks. But he said he's thinking about going back to an Apple Watch again. And I was telling him, wait till the fall. Like, don't, because even if you end up still getting a Series 3 in the fall, one, they're going to be cheaper, and two, you'll at least know, like what you're missing out on, or what differences in the hardware you're going to see, and then you can make a decision based on what your needs are. So I'm ready for September, just because of the watch, which is kind of weird. It's usually everyone wants to know what the new phone is and all that stuff, but I feel like we had the last big radically different phone that we're going to have probably for a while, happened last year. So I'm a little more interested in the watch this fall.
The iPhone 10 Plus is going to be something to behold, though.
Literally, physically.
Behold with two hands.
Yes. Yeah. If you care anything about that screen, goodness gracious. Brittany needs a new phone, and that 7 will be paid off in the fall. And so I'm trying to think through, like what the options are for her. And I'm partially considering, well, I could transfer my 10 to her, and then because she doesn't care. Right. But even that, I'm like terrified of her having a 10, because she's going to have to drastically change her habits. And mostly in terms of not giving the phone to our children, because her 7, bless it, it's lived a hard life.
Is it not in an OtterBox or anything?
Oh, no. I mean, that would have helped, right, if we had a better case. But it's in a case. It's not like caseless, but it could be in a better case. But at this point, I'm just like, who cares? Like,
no, but
we're just going down the finish line. Yeah, I mean, that
10,
that's one of the things. Yeah,
good quality case.
If she took my 10, I feel like this is a good quality case for protection from falls.
For a child.
No, but that's what I'm saying. You're gonna have to stop giving it to her.
She's not gonna stop giving it to the child.
Well, then she's not getting
her
a new phone.
OtterBox.
No, she can keep her 7. She can keep her busted up 7 for as long as she wants.
Or keep the 7 for the children. Take the SIM out. Just get an OtterBox case.
The only time she really gives the phone to a child is every morning when Everly wakes up.
The only time is every morning.
Well, but just hear me out. She doesn't leave the bed. She just lays on the bed and holds the phone in her little chubby 19-month-old hand. And occasionally she leaves the bed, but she doesn't leave the room. But still, she managed to, crack the home button in our room that is pretty childproof. I don't know. So yeah,
there's an easy solution here.
Habits are going to have to change.
I really am interested in experiencing, and I don't know how well this is going to work. It just doesn't make any sense to me that there is no required Hey Siri for the watch with watchOS 5.
Oh yeah.
Whenever it's on, that you can just start talking to Siri. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Do you think that is an indication of where other devices might be heading? It's different though because of the way you interact with your watch anyway.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if it works well, I'm going to be really surprised if it works really well. I mean, if it's never going to be 100%. But even if it's like high 90%, if it's like over like at least 90% of the time, if I just look at my watch after it comes on when I race to wake,
yeah,
and I just tell it to start a X minute timer or remind me to take my lunch in the morning at 6:30 a.m. because if I ask you to do it at 6:30, that even if it's 7 o'clock at night, then you're going to remind me at 6:30 p.m. Just absolute madness. Now,
Slack does the same thing. So, it's hard being a
That being
assistant.
said, there is machine learning coming to Siri that should, based on your usage, become better as you use it to get to know you more. So if that is worth its salt at all,
Mm-hmm.
then after I tell it 6:30 a.m. a couple of times, then if I just tell it to remind me to take my lunch at 6:30, then just do it at 6:30 a.m. This is not complicated. This is like just very, very bare minimum machine learning that can be done.
You've got my wheel spinning now about what other devices might look like with some kind of, more intuitive interaction with engaging Siri than just saying, the keywords. I've turned it off on, ever since we got the HomePod, I've turned it off on my phone and all my iPads because the only time I really use it is when I'm at home and I'm wanting to play a song or do something, interact with the HomePod. So I have that turned off on my phone, and when I do need it, I just hit the lock button, hold it down, talk then. But
it seems like a really poor implementation, and maybe they'll get there next year or the year after that. That it has that it can't just kind of listen silently on the phone, determine the HomePod is there, and just not even change at all. Because right, I mean, if you had it on, then it would at least interrupt what you're looking at on your phone, and then it would go away.
It's pretty quick.
It wouldn't receive the response, but at the same time, it's just like, why can't you do that in the background and not pop up? And
it was just, it slowed things down just enough for me to just turn it off, because it really was no great use to me. It was much greater use for me to have it on the HomePod exclusively and be quicker there than it was to the maybe 2 or 3 times in a month that I would use it on my phone, when I can just use use a physical button, heaven forbid, to do something. So I just ended up turning it off on my other devices just to make it easier when I'm at home.
How weird does that feel to push your side button for Siri?
Not as weird as it felt when I tried to lock your phone earlier by pushing the side and there was nothing there on your SE. It doesn't feel that weird. I mean, I've gotten used to it now, and the button is bigger. It's a bigger lock button than we've had on other phones previously. So I don't know. I don't even notice it now. And like I said, mostly when I'm doing it, I'm either at my desk or I'm somewhere where it's on a flat surface anyway. Like maybe I'm cooking or something when I would want to engage it. And so I'll just, I just reach down and hold it down. It's not as weird as I'm usually not picking the phone up. It's on a flat surface and I'm just reaching down and hitting that button. So it's a little easier than if I had been holding it in my hand.
I used a coworker's Google
Pixel
6P, like the latest one.
Pixel 2.
And Pixel 2 6P, I think it's called, something like this.
A lot of numbers.
Right. And I noticed something that I feel like Apple could do very easily, and it would be really nice to have, is that on the home screen of the Google Pixel 2 6P, when you swipe up, then it does something. If you just swipe up in the middle of the screen, then it brings up I think it brings up like a tray of apps or something in Android in this particular device. But I just feel like on the 10 and similar devices that will come out in September, if you just swiped up as you're looking at your home screen of apps and that went to multitasking like it does now, I feel like that'd be nice. And why not be able to swipe up in the middle of the screen? Obviously, this is different when you're in an app and you're going to be scrolling that way. So, it's totally a moot point at that point. But if you didn't have to go all the way down to the bottom and drag it from the bottom necessarily, if you could just do it in the middle of the home screen to pull up your multitasking and look at your recent apps that way,
it would be easier, because as hard as it is to get to the top of the screen, it's as hard sometimes to get to the bottom of the screen, depending on how you're holding it. And I've got a thumb that is, pretty relative to the rest of my body, short and stubby. So it's hard. It's hard to get down to the bottom of the screen sometimes too, just as hard as it is to get to that top third. occasionally. So if there was, I like your idea here of some kind of middle swipe interaction that could engage some type of functionality.
And so similarly so, and this is true with this Google device I was using, if you swipe down, just like in the middle of the screen, then it would bring down something that looked kind of similar to Control Center or notifications or something like that. And that, honestly, that would be great. And would then create a situation where when you're using a 10 style device, if you're in an app, you could swipe up from the bottom to go home and then just swipe down in the middle of the screen, which would be so much more attainable than ever getting up to the top of the screen.
Right.
So I really feel like this is totally doable. It's something that Apple could totally do, because I don't see any reason. I mean, there's nothing else that is happening when you just swipe up and down on the home screen,
right?
On Springboard. So I feel like that would be a great addition.
Last little bit of Apple news. We've got an update on AirPower. I have to credit Hair Force One on Twitter for his amazing tweet of announce in September, release in September. Perfect. What's the deal here? Like, what do you think has happened with this product? Because they announced it last fall. And granted, there were some other things they announced last fall that, or was the HomePod announced at WWDC more than a year ago, or was it announced in the fall? I can't remember.
HomePod was announced at WWDC.
It was, okay. So
to ship in December.
And then it didn't.
And it ships in February.
Right. So there's a delay there. AirPods had a delay, slight delay, not as prominent, I guess, as certainly AirPower. So they announced this wireless charging pad, right? Back in September, can charge 3 devices on it. Which, if you're an Apple fanboy like we are, that's pretty appealing, right? You've got AirPods, watch, phone, all on one wireless charging device. Sounds good. It's going to be ridiculously expensive, I'm sure, but sounds good, right? And then crickets for months and months. And finally, a new report out this week. Somewhat, I guess, I don't know. I guess there are some sources here saying what the issue was, but it seems a little speculative to me. But it makes sense. What they're saying here is that because Apple is wanting you to be able to charge multiple devices at once, the way these charging pads work, you have to get your device on there in a very specific way for it to charge efficiently, right? And so Apple's saying, well, we're going to make this big pad and you can put 3 things on it. Oh, and they're all very different sizes and shapes. I guess that would be difficult to manufacture. And so we're finally getting some news on what the deal is, but I don't know. Are you interested in AirPower at all?
I am. Yeah, I think it'd be.
You got your Work 8 now. You could charge it on there.
Absolutely.
And I'm, whatever the next watch is. That's another thing another rumor I've heard thrown around is that maybe they were having trouble getting past watch models to charge on it, and maybe they were just waiting until the fall when they announce a new watch Series 4 and it watch Series 4 will work on the AirPower.
Well, the Series 3 is the only one that they said would charge with AirPower. And I know Serenity on the talk show was mentioning that she felt like they may back out on that. And to me, it'd be a really terrible look.
Yeah.
To have said that this device is compatible with this unreleased thing, but when it's released, it's going to be compatible.
But maybe they're thinking, if we don't release it till the fall, you're going to want a new watch anyway. So just don't worry about that Series 3 stuff we said before.
But it just seems crazy. It seems weird that they announced it so early.
Mm. Yeah, it's just what happened, it because of how long it's been, it seems to me that it must have been some type of technical issue that they were running into, because otherwise, but maybe they hit a certain threshold and were like, well, forget it. Let's just wait till the fall. Like, you know what I mean?
So I guess Gurman's latest report is that they were really hoping for June, and at this point they feel like they're like shooting for September now.
They hit the threshold
and right on time. But I do feel like it's not that interesting, the technical challenges that they ran into, because those are almost kind of predictable, that they would have run into technical challenges on this. This is not like anything anyone else has ever come out with, and they're, let alone from a very technical standpoint, they're very easy to understand from a layman's perspective reasons why this would be really difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, how close can the devices be together? You have some spacing, and obviously if you want to be able to lay a device any which way, especially, I don't know if you've experienced the Qi or Key or however you pronounce this.
Qi.
So everybody says Qi charging, but then on Tech Meme Ride Home, which I don't know if you've ever listened to this podcast. It's a really good podcast.
I don't listen to near as many podcasts as you.
I don't know about that, but
separate episode.
But Tech Meme Ride Home, totally recommend it. I've been listening to it on my ride home quite a bit now. It's usually 15 to 20 minutes, and it really does hit the high points of the stories of the day, which is, it's really good. But he was saying key charging. I've heard others say key, but anyways, whatever it may be, I don't know if you have any experience with it at all. We got one for Blair that was cheap on sale on some site, and she used it for a while, and then I've been meaning to set it up for myself to plop my 8 down on while I plug in.
I'll tell you why I haven't gotten one yet. It's because the battery life on this thing is so dang good. I don't need a charger during the day. Like I've been looking at some and thinking, oh, this would be nice to have at work, you know. But when I'm at work, I'm not in need of a charge. Like, I'm just not, and so I don't know. It just hasn't drawn me in yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, you do have to place it in the right way. I mean, that totally is a thing. And so to me, the more interesting part is, how did they not predict more that they were going to run into things? And to me, it's like a perfect candidate to follow the historical Apple strategy, which is not say a gosh darn thing about it, because maybe you can come out with it in February, but maybe it doesn't come out until next February. Like, if you just didn't say a thing about it, there's already plenty good, Qi chargers out there to use. Yeah. They're cheap. I mean, if you want them to be, there's different styles. It's not like this was the only, if this was like the first one, that would make more sense, because you're saying, hey, we're building in this feature to the 8 and to the 10, and we're going to support that feature with this hardware, this being the only hardware that can support that feature. But no, that's not the case at all. So it's very strange. It seems like a really easy to avoid miss, and yet it's been really missed.
I really feel like at this point, it's just, of course, you just save it to the fall now, because that's when people are going to be willing to buy accessories anyway, because it'll be new phones and all this stuff. And yeah, I do wonder
though, if it would be a little better for them if they came out with it in like August, if they could, just to come out with it before they're on stage, just to be able to say on stage, works with AirPower, which is out. Period. End of story. Yeah. It's out, guys. Go get it, rather than AirPower, which is finally going to be released. To me, there's the other argument, which is like, well, maybe they have a story to tell on why, but they're not going to tell a story around why it's late.
I did see a tweet today that it's rumored to have a custom version of iOS on it as well, which sounds awesome. Of course, when they were showing some of the, I don't even know if it was like actual demos or just, they were showing pictures, I guess, way back when they announced it. The way I just would have assumed it was all built into the, the way they have this ability to show the battery levels of everything that from your phone. I mean that's the biggest screen you're gonna have real estate on to see that. But I think it's cool. There's some kind of, in typical Apple fashion, they're trying to delight you a little bit, and sometimes that
Not delighting anybody right now.
Sometimes that bites them. Let's take a left turn for Levi's gaming corner. I feel like I need a corner because I feel like we'll talk about gaming occasionally. And I'm inspired by Hello Internet to have corners that you can't cut out of here. So E3 was 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to go deep into like all the different things. Really, mainly just wanted to talk about one game in particular. But first, let's set the stage. I know that you are like, I don't even know if moderate is the right word. You're an occasional gamer, and every blue moon gamer.
Correct.
Yeah, still rocking the PS3.
Still
right?
rocking the PS3.
Yeah. Yeah. Any plans to change at some point?
We'll probably get a Switch this December. Probably the kids will probably get one for Christmas.
Hope they don't listen to this podcast. Spoilers.
Right. Not that they would even know what that means, other than they're getting something for Christmas. But I mean, I'll use that for Mario Kart. I mean, I'll Mario Kart out on that. I might get into Zelda. There's probably a good chance I will.
Listen, there's no might. Okay, you either dive in an all-consuming fashion, or just don't buy it. Because if you spend 2 hours with it versus I haven't looked in a really long time, but conservatively, let's say 80 hours that I put into it in 2017. Haven't played it at all.
Sounds very conservative.
In 2018 yet. Yeah. It was the only game I played last year. Really. I mean, I might have played something towards the end of the year. Well, when Odyssey came out, I finally played something else, but it was my anytime I had time to play a game, which, let's be honest, isn't very much time, even less time now that we're doing a podcast. But any free time I had in 2017, it was spent eyes deep in Breath of the Wild.
Do you ever play portably?
I did initially when I first got it, partially because I got it on a trip. And I was able to play it some on the dock in the hotel when I got it. But that was the main experience at first. The other challenge I had with not going back to the dock very quickly when I got home was it only comes with one charger. And at the time, it was the only USB-C charger in the house. And so I had a really hard time wanting to put that into our TV stand. And then, if I needed to take it out to take it on a trip or something, it was just going to be a hassle, right? So I didn't play on the dock for the longest time until I got upgraded to, a newer MacBook Pro at work. So I had an additional USB-C charger. And then I felt comfortable enough to put the dock in the TV stand. So I play more docked now than I do handheld. But that first I would say probably 60 of the 80 hours, again, conservatively, was played in handheld with Zelda. But it's been the flip on Mario Odyssey. It's been mostly, but that's a game that I could play more with, the kids watching and they're having fun with it. And then Zelda is just not as interesting to them at this stage. But yeah, I play less in handheld mode, but what I hear more, it seems like in the gaming industry, it seems more people play it. It's their mobile device essentially, which is funny because, they have other mobile devices they could play games on, but not Nintendo game. Well, some Nintendo games, but not, true blue Nintendo games.
Controllers change everything.
Yeah, and you say that, but I mean, I just have the Joy-Cons. I didn't even get I guess they call it the Pro Controller. I would like to have one, but $80 for a controller is steep. Yeah. And I mean, it comes with a little dock that you can put the Joy-Cons in, so it feels like a controller. It's not great, but you know, it's not $80 on a Pro Controller. But what I really wanted to talk to you about from E3 was kind of quiet this year. Which I was talking to another friend that's big into gaming, and kind of our theory that we arrived on is they're in this weird in-between stage. Xbox and Sony primarily, right? Where the next console is just around the corner, probably 2020. But so they're in this weird phase where they can't really go too deep in showing new games, because at some point they're showing next gen games and they're not showing just current gen games anymore. And so this was kind of a quiet year. And like Sony, even they came out before and said, here are the 4 games we're really going to focus on in our press conference. And they pretty much stuck to that. I mean, they showed some other games too, but, and then Nintendo, who knows what they're ever doing. They have a whole different strategy. It's totally different, right, than Xbox and Sony. But
well, they came out with a new Mario Party. They're coming out with a new Mario
true.
Party, though. I'm a big Mario Party fan.
I haven't played Mario Party since the Nintendo 64.
No,
they were like, what, 10 on
I don't think I have either, but I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed Mario
You
Party.
mentioned Mario Kart earlier. I thought I was going to just jump on that real fast, and I don't even have it. Like, someday I might get to it, but there are 900 plus flipping moons in Mario Odyssey, and I've only got 460 something. So I could play that game it's just like Breath of the Wild in that way, in that you could play those games forever and never need another game. So the challenge for Nintendo, I think, though, is that they're not going to have another game like those 2 games anytime soon, really. They came out swinging as hard as they could when they launched. But what I really wanted to talk to you about quickly is The Last of Us Part 2. Because there was a day when I gave you my copy of The Last of Us on PlayStation 3 that I never opened. I think it was still maybe wrapped up. I never got around to playing it, and then by the time I did want to play it, I had a PS4, and so I got the remastered version. So didn't lent. I just gave it to you. I don't need it. I have no need for it. But and you started it and you never finished it. And now, The Last of Us Part 2 is probably coming out next year sometime, hopefully. Clock's ticking, Philip. You gotta make a decision here, because this game is probably my favorite game ever. And I really need, because you started it, I really need you to finish it, because there's a lot of things we could talk about with this game that we can't talk about until you finish it. And I'm okay with you. Listen, if you don't want to play it, I know you're a busy dude. I'm okay with you just watching it on YouTube. Just go find a playthrough. I actually have a playthrough I could recommend to you that I think would be interesting. And then you'd at least know, and you'd be caught up to not play The Last of Us Part 2 someday. But I need you there, man, because this game is so good. And, well, you tell me, was it something about the game that you didn't like? Or was it just a time thing? It's a really dark game. I understand that. Like, it's a hard, very violent game. And this gameplay demo that showed at E3 for Part 2 was a whole nother level of that. But why aren't you finishing it, man? You got to do me the solid.
So the main reason I didn't finish it is because I played the 40-ish% that I've completed before we moved over a year and a half ago.
Yes.
But after that, it was just one thing after another. And then when I ended up having more time to do so, then it was more of I had a hard time getting back into it.
Because it had been so long.
because it
Probably didn't even remember the story.
remember like
Yeah.
the controls and like, you know, more intricate controls, especially.
That's hard too, because like I want to go back to Breath of the Wild and play the DLC at some point. But it's been months. And yeah, I mean, I'm very, you know, I'm very well equipped in that game at this point. I've done a lot of things, but to jump back in, I would struggle, even, you know, having great armor and all that stuff. I would really struggle to figure it out again going back in this late. But come on, man, just watch it. Just watch it.
I may get to that point, especially if The Last of Us 2 comes out and I'm not back into The Last of Us even at that point. I mean, that's a ways out. So I feel like I may get back into it. I'm just trying to find the right way. I mean, one of the problems is that I stopped invariably at a point where it was kind of a tough spot.
Mm.
And so, let alone like jumping back into that tough spot almost 2 years later is going to be even harder. So I think I did when I tried. I've given it maybe like 2 chances
Well, and
trying to get back into it.
I told you too. Just drop that
and I
difficulty
think I
down.
dropped the difficulty down, and we'll see.
It's a brutal game. This game, it doesn't make any sense for me to love it as much as I do, because on paper, it checks off all these things that I hate about games, like constantly being chased by things. I hate that. Like the like Super Mario levels where you've got the sun and it starts spinning and then comes down and tries to swoop you. I hate. That's like I think that must have traumatized me as a younger child, because I hate games where you're being chased by something. I hate games where you don't have a lot of resources. You know, it's like a survival game or something where, you know, hey, it'd be great if I had a gun and lots of bullets, but guess what? I got 2 bullets and I got a stick. You know, like that stresses me out. So I don't know why I love this game so much. I mean, I do. I do know why I love it, because it's a great story and all that stuff. But man, on paper, I should hate this game, but I love it. And whew, the gameplay, which I can't even really talk to you about the gameplay trailer for part 2, because it ruins part 1 to some degree. So
I'll make sure not to watch that.
Yeah, do not watch it until you've completed part 1. But
Okay.
They still haven't released. You've got time, because they haven't even released a date, so you're good.
Last tech topic. I noticed on Twitter this mention of any iPad with 2 gigabytes of RAM, of which the 5th generation regular old iPad that I have is one of those, and obviously both the iPad Pros that you have.
Not so fast. The 9.7 inch only had 2.
Right, it has 2.
Oh, okay. In my head, I was thinking 4.
No.
Sorry, I'm off.
Only 2 gigabytes of RAM
Only 2, yeah.
required. But previously, you had to have 4 gigabytes of RAM. So it was either of the 12.9s or the 10.5 that could run with split screen apps on the iPad with a, what do you call this? Floater third app. I don't remember any of the terms for this anymore.
It's like slide over or
something like that. Yeah. But you could only do that on the 4 gigabyte models. But in iOS 5 and iOS 12, watchOS 5.
watchOS 5, which they titled iOS 5 in the beta.
Right. iOS 12 beta 2 on 2 gigabyte RAM iPad models, you can have 3 apps, 2 in split view and 1 in slide over, and you can have a 4th in picture if you're running video as well.
But come on.
So
why would you want to do that?
My question
on a
to
9.7 inch screen.
Maybe you don't. But certainly on a 12.9, that'd be nice.
Oh, yeah.
You already had that.
Sounds great.
But I mean, it's always nice to have the capability for the 1 in a million times that you'd like to do it.
Certainly. If you're watching something compelling, but you're still trying to monitor Twitter as well. Yeah.
Right.
And type notes.
So do you ever use even 3 apps, or is 2 really the maximum you ever get to?
There have been occasions when I've used 3, but it's always been, well, I say 3, one being picture in picture, right? Watching a video of some kind. But it's more common for me to just have, something picture in picture and then doing notes or something like that. I'd say that's the more common scenario. But there have been times when I've got Safari on one side, notes on another, and then maybe I'm semi watching something on Netflix. But not super often. But 4, I can't really. I mean, I just can't even think of like what a scenario would be where I would be doing all those things and still accomplishing anything really.
Yeah, I mean, I could see utilizing Safari and Twitter and watching something,
Yeah.
and then potentially notes as well.
Show prep.
There's a potential.
Or game prep. That's when I do it a lot.
Right.
Is game prep.
Makes sense.
During the fall and spring, or when I'm at a game and I'm not watching something else in those occasions. But that's when I'm using 2 apps mostly. Is when I'm working a game or something like that, taking notes, monitoring Twitter, trying to find other scores. More so during the playoffs or late in the season when things are getting tight. But that's more. That was wild though. That picture. The most wild part though was that they were demoing it. Correct me if I'm wrong. They were demoing it on an iPad Mini 4. I thought they said that somewhere on there.
Yes.
Why?
You're correct about that.
I mean, I guess just to show that it's possible.
It's
but
just a particular type of madness.
Yeah. That would be like, well, I'm not going to disparage you anymore about your SE, so I'll just stop there. But
speaking of though, on any iPhone, all the iPhones, can we get picture-in-picture video just so I can have the audio continue to run?
Yeah.
While I look at something on Twitter or anywhere else. It drives me
I don't know if
crazy.
you listened to Connected yet this week, but they talk about, like YouTube Premium being available in other countries now. And they were talking about, why YouTube doesn't do picture-in-picture and why they lock the audio, continuing audio behind the premium
an upgrade.
Oh, was it? I couldn't remember which one, but I never, because that's been a complaint, right? Is why can't you get out of the app and still listen to the audio on YouTube, and why can't you do picture in picture on YouTube, like if you're on your iPad? And obviously they can do the audio piece if you're subscribed to premium, but the explanation made sense to me of, well, you can't autoplay when you're in either of those modes in iOS. So, that's how YouTube makes their money, right? Is autoplay, keep getting your eyes, keep playing, and keep serving you ads. And I'm like, okay, I don't like it, but I finally understand it now. And it's still upsetting though, because I would love to be able to have YouTube, PIP and working on something else.
Absolutely.
That would be fabulous. And there's no reason why they can't do it. Well, there is because of the autoplay, but there's no technical reason why they can't do it. There are monetary reasons why they will not do it.
The worst kind.
Yeah. All right, you ready to talk about Solo?
I'm ready to talk about Solo.
News this week coming out that, well, one, the Disney Fox deal finally went through. So that's kind of tangentially related, but not really related to Star Wars. If you're a Marvel fan, you'll like it. But the other news this week, though, is that Lucasfilm has put on hold all future one-off stories, or what they were calling anthology stories. Obviously, they're not putting episode 9 on hold. We'll see that next December. But all of this stemming from the lack of performance of Solo, which came out back in May, which was their second standalone anthology, or the tag they're using is a Star Wars story, right? Both of us have seen Solo. We're going to talk a little bit about the movie. Let's just go there first. Like, opening thoughts. What did we think about the movie? Who wants to go first? I don't mind going first, but I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot. So
You can go first.
okay. I like the movie. I have a really hard time understanding all the angst about Solo. Was it the best Star Wars movie ever? No. It's not, it's a little standalone movie. It's not going to be the best, right? But I thought it was fun. I would even put it in terms of just like Levi's enjoyment of Star Wars movies list, which is different from Levi's favorite Star Wars movies list, which is also different from what Levi thinks are the best Star Wars movies list. I had more fun with it than I did with Rogue One. A lot of that is just because Rogue One is super depressing. It's a much heavier movie, just given the the subject matter and how it ties into the overall Star Wars story. No pun intended. I thought Solo was a more fun movie. It was a little lighter. It just had a pretty good energy. I know I've seen a lot of complaints about it started off slow. I didn't really get that. I felt like it started off well and was well paced. There are so many deep cut references that, I don't think they're all necessary, but it's fun, right? I mean, it's fun to do these things. I go see the movie. I come out, I see reviews later. I see how poorly it's doing at the box office. And I just don't get it. Like, I can't reconcile what I saw on screen with the reaction. So that's kind of where I'm at for setting the stage.
Yeah, I really don't understand its lackluster performance at the box office, really. I mean, the way I feel about it is honestly not not that different than Rotten Tomatoes consensus. So Rotten Tomatoes ended up giving it a 71%. And the critics' consensus there is a flawed yet fun and fast-paced space adventure that should satisfy newcomers to the saga as well as longtime fans who check their expectations at the theater door. And to me, that's a great little
summary
phrase to include there at the end, especially is just like many have said on podcasts that you and I have listened to. There's going to be Star Wars movies. I guess Jason Snell has said this more than anybody. That there's going to be Star Wars movies every single year. And so,
well, maybe not now.
Maybe not now. But if that's the case, then not every one of them is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
Not every one of them is just going to set a new stage and just so.
I still liked this movie more than any of the prequels. I'll throw that out
absolutely.
there.
No, that's easy. Easy pickings.
Well, I'm just making sure we're not getting too carried away here.
No. No, I thought it was a good. I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah.
I thought Rogue One, as we just talk about Star Wars stories as a whole, especially with the news coming out, Rogue One, it was a little hard to follow for me. I felt like the pacing of it was more weird than Solo necessarily.
To be fair, I've only seen it once. It was in theaters, but I remember what you're talking about, especially at the beginning. It was like,
especially at the beginning,
bam, 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 and you're meeting all these different people that are going to come together, and yeah, it was a lot to take in.
Right.
How many planets have we been to so far? It's only been 20 minutes.
So I watched it on Netflix. I watched a good bit of it. I didn't finish it, but I watched a good bit of it on Netflix recently, and it's a good movie. Especially when you know what's going on. Like what that 5-minute little visit to that planet just meant.
Yeah.
It's easier to follow, and I mean, I thought it was really good.
When the last 2 minutes. The last 2 minutes can shade it differently for a lot of people, because you could be kind of mad on that movie, and then you get to the last 2 minutes when Darth Vader just rages on all these nobodies, and then you're like, this was the best movie I've ever seen. Yeah, can we just have a movie of that? Well, I guess not for sure anymore, because we're on hold with these movies, but as far as I'm concerned, they're 2 for 2 on these standalone movies. Now, that doesn't mean that they were both great, but to me, it's like they did the job of making an entertaining movie that adds to the lore in some degree, not as deeply, obviously, as the core episode movies are going to do. But I just don't understand the just general meh or straight up, being upset with this movie. I think a lot of it has to do with how you felt about The Last Jedi is playing into some of it too, and how quickly it came out after The Last Jedi. I think if it had
That's
come out in
true.
December, it probably would have done better. The other problem is, I don't know if you could tell from the preview what this movie was really about, other than, oh, it's a younger Han Solo. Like, they didn't really do a good job of kind of setting up the movie. I didn't feel like in the trailers, because going into it, I really had no idea what was about to happen. And I watched all the trailers, right? I mean, I'm gonna try really hard with episode 9 not to watch any trailers, but I don't know if I'm gonna make it.
I hate trailers as an entity. Oh, I hate them. And I just hate them more and more.
I'm gonna try my best with episode 9, but I can't guarantee anything.
Yeah.
But I felt like I still had no idea what this movie was really about. And so I think maybe they messed some things up with communicating what it was going to be about. But I just feel like maybe people are a little fatigued with Star Wars in general, particularly how divisive The Last Jedi was, which we haven't talked about The Last Jedi, and I don't want to like go on a deep dive here. I think we both enjoyed The Last Jedi,
Very
probably
much so.
more so than, the general public.
Apparently.
But maybe we can talk about that another time. But I kind of feel like that plays into some of it too. And the other thing that I think has damaged this movie is that so many people love Han Solo, and like I talked to 2 people the week after it came out, that I work with, that are huge Star Wars fans, but they love Han Solo. Like, Han Solo is their character, right? That's their person. And they both didn't like the movie. And they both said the same thing to me, when we started to talk about it. And it was, that's not Han Solo. He's not Han Solo to me. And listen, I get it, but I don't understand that, because yeah, he's not Han Solo yet in this movie. Like, he's not the Han Solo you knew from, A New Hope or any of the other movies. Yeah, he's not that Han Solo. Like, why would you expect him to be? And I don't know if it was just a physical thing. Like, I've heard people say, well, he doesn't look anything like Harrison Ford. And I think Donald Glover kind of makes that problem even more stark, because the first time he talked, I was like, holy crap, Billy D. Williams is in this movie?
He was super good.
That was nuts, how much he sounded like him. It was insane. But I don't understand the argument of, he wasn't Han Solo to me. Well, no, he's not that Han Solo yet. He was much more naive and like optimistic. And one of my favorite, there's two favorite lines for me in the movie are, the spin on the classic, I have a bad feeling about this, when he says, I have a great feeling about this. I thought that was hilarious. And then my favorite part of the movie is after they've like crash landed on this desert planet after they've gone through the Kessel Run, and he's standing over by Lando, and he's like saying something like, "Oh, we can fix it up. It's gonna be okay. We'll fix it." And Lando says, "I hate you," and he says, "I know," which of course is the play off of him and Leia's moment in Empire. I thought that was so funny, but I don't know. I'm sad because I like Star Wars movies, and I'm also sad because I feel like they set this movie up for a sequel, and I'm not sure that's going to happen now. Now, there's ways that they can still kind of make a sequel out of it, if they do end up doing, if they still are able to pull off a Boba Fett movie at some point, or please, please, an Obi-Wan movie at some point. I could see them still being able to bring him in depending on when those movies are set. Because obviously Obi-Wan's hanging around Tatooine. We know at the end of Solo that's where they're going. I'm just a little bummed because I felt like the movie was good enough for a sequel, and they certainly dropped breadcrumbs all over it to set it up for a sequel. And now I'm just not sure that's going to happen. It makes me a little sad.
I wonder. I mean, I think it's a good point that it did come out soon after The Last Jedi.
Which this week apparently there's a someone has said they'll put up $200 million to do a fan led remake of The Last Jedi, which is
super silly.
Is dumb, but
certainly, so Rogue One was a full year after The Force Awakens, a full year before The Last Jedi, and that seems to me like maybe a better cadence is to kind of have one per December, basically.
Yeah. Christmas and Star Wars sounds great to me. Let's do that.
It does.
Because you know what? I'm going to get to Christmas this year and there's not going to be a Star Wars movie.
That's not going to feel right.
And I'm going to be upset about it because I've been conditioned for 3 years in a row to have that. Yeah, I'm going to be bummed about that. And so are my children. I feel like I've probably, let's just put this out there. Like The Last Jedi could have been terrible, which it wasn't. I don't think it was. It could have been terrible, and I probably would have loved it. And I'll openly admit that. I think I may be bringing some of that kind of stuff into Solo as well, because like this movie was a mess to make. Like I don't know how familiar you are with all the production stuff, but they fired the directors like more than halfway through production. Had to bring in a new director. He's an old director, but bring in Ron Howard. He has to reshoot a lot of stuff. And they somehow still hit that May date. I'm like, of all the movies to get delayed, I would have assumed, there's no way that's going to be in May, especially after all the trouble they had. And so maybe part of it is like, this movie should have been a complete mess. And somehow it was like not a mess. Not to say that it was great, but I just expected going in, I'm like, I'm worried about this movie because of all the behind the scenes stuff they had to deal with. And I couldn't even, I'm not a movie producer. I don't doctor scripts, but it felt like a cohesive story to me. And maybe I'm giving it too much credit just because of all that behind the scenes stuff that they somehow managed their way through.
I mean, I didn't feel like it felt like a complete mess at all. I really don't feel like it felt messy to me. It was a cohesive story and made sense and had legitimate, motives that people had and fears that people had. And that to me is,
now,
a lot of the part of the story.
It was very weird when is her name Kira? I think her name's Kira. So. When he kisses Kira, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? That is not Leia. Like, you gotta stop that. Which that brings up a whole separate side story. I feel like I go way too deep into these movies, but knowing that ultimately like him and Leia don't work out, which that's depressing in its own right. I feel like people just gloss over that with The Force Awakens. They're not together. Okay, they embrace. They have their last hug. She basically sends him to his death. I might be going too dark here. They're not together, and they haven't been together for, I would say, conservatively, a couple years at least, maybe longer than that.
I'd say longer.
That's depressing, right? But people don't talk about that. But watching Solo, I'm like, man, what if his real true love was Kira? And not Leia, and Leia and him were always destined to fail because, you see, I go too deep into this stuff. I think about it way too much.
I'd like a sequel to this movie.
They set it up for sure.
I don't understand. The really poor earnings don't make much sense to me.
Yeah, like it's not going to make its money back. That's
I just-
crazy. It's a Star Wars movie.
So Solo, people loving Han Solo to me, I guess maybe that prevents them from seeing it multiple times, which could be part of the earnings for movies like this. But people loving Solo would not prevent them from seeing it one time. At least it would incentivize them to see it at least one time. If you have a bunch of people that just love Han Solo.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't see them staying away from this movie. Maybe they would stay away from seeing it again. But no, I think it's a good movie, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the rest of the Star Wars stories. And
yeah, the thing I'm bummed most about, if I'm really going deep down the depression sidewalk, this puts in jeopardy me getting my Obi-Wan movie with Ewan McGregor as an older Obi-Wan in between 3 and 4. You know, I want that story. All right, I want it. Like I really want it because you know it's been 13 years since episode 3 came out. Ewan McGregor, very handsome man, but he has aged a little bit. You know, it's like the perfect age for him. I think it's 19 years in between 3 and 4. So it's been 15 years or 13 years. We're getting close. It's time. It's time for my Obi-Wan standalone movie. And all you Star Wars haters, all you Last Jedi haters who didn't go see Solo, you're ruining my opportunity for another Ewan McGregor. Arguably the single redeeming factor of the prequels. You're keeping me from having that movie. Westworld update. Where are you?
I'm in the middle of episode 6.
I think episode 6 is my favorite episode. Yeah. Just get
I look
ready.
forward to the second half.
Yeah, you
of
should.
the episode and of the rest of the season.
I'm not as concerned about Westworld as I gave up on The Last of Us. You're obviously not going to finish that, but I'm more confident in your ability to finish Westworld because at some point we gotta talk about this season because it, I think whatever episode 1 that we talked a little bit about it. I feel like they turned a corner at a certain point, and to me it's episode 6 where you're at. Where they really they still haven't laid their cards out fully, but something happens in episode 6 and you're like, okay, and I can see where things are going kinda now, right? And like I said, you're either on board with this or you're not. I'm hoping you are on board with this. But yeah, it's been a completely different ride than season 1, right? Season 1 is so contained, it's so just this almost perfect little story. Like I haven't felt that way about a season of television probably since season 1 of Lost, right? Like season 1 of Lost. If you watch season 1 of Lost and you don't like it, then something's wrong with you emotionally. Like if you don't cry at least 3 or 4 times in season 1 of Lost, then I don't know about you. What were you gonna say?
I feel like I want to say it's season 4 of The Walking Dead. The Heart of the Governor story. I feel like that is a really good, just kind of back and forth. Like they keep sending people to, what's the place called?
Well,
where was he the governor of?
Woodbury.
So they keep sending people there, and they keep sending people back and forth, and
which that storyline starts in season 3.
Yeah,
bleeds into the first half of season 4.
And the reason I thought of that is because this season 2 of Westworld, and again, where I'm at, feels very much like season 5 of The Walking Dead, and that everybody is kind of in their own spots, split up a little bit,
and they're all kind of coming together.
Just kind of hitting everybody, and you get a little snippet here and a little snippet there, and sometimes you go a whole episode or 2 without getting back to that cliffhanger that they left you with.
An
episode or 2
you have
ago.
no idea how right you are.
And part of me would just want it to be more of a straight shot, but then part of me likes the variety that gives you. It's just got to be played right, either
Yeah.
way
Well,
can go well.
this story, it's so layered, and you didn't even realize how layered it was until you get something like a season 2. Season 1, it's so contained, it's so perfect. I feel like season 2 is just filling in all the gaps, right? Like all this lore, revealing things to you that you didn't even know you wanted to know, but like really just going back and kind of shading in the colors, right? Of like, oh gosh, I didn't even think of that, or
it's creating gaps that weren't even there before, so it can fill them.
well, I don't know about that. Like what?
Well, like using this technology for like immortality of humans, like the whole Delos experiment in the mini Apple Park, because all that glass is
the valley,
so rounded.
The valley beyond.
Yes. I mean, to me, and I don't know if that has gone any further, and I'll find out. But I mean, to me, that was a really interesting
twist, like a little turn, right?
Yeah. So that's one way they could have used it or tried to use it, or one way that you could turn this. Really, really interesting intro to episode 6, and obviously I'm in the middle of it, but as totally blank on her name, Dolores turns the tables on who I want to call Jeffrey Wright, but Bernard.
Oh yeah, and yeah.
And
yes.
The dialogue that they used in that spot, it's just like so
dude
good.
that episode, man, you got to finish it. Oh man, yeah, because they set that up right in a few episodes earlier, where you're seeing William doing that with his supposed father-in-law, and then for that twist at the end of that cold open, you're like, oh God, what is happening? What is happening right now? Yeah, yes. Stefan, you got to finish it, man. You got to get caught up.
I will.
Last episode is this weekend, so I'm just gonna be chomping at the bits until
I may get there before next Thursday. We'll see about that.
Oh man, I've really enjoyed this season. I don't know if it's quite as tight as season 1 in terms of just like pure genius start to finish, but I'm so interested with where it's going. The challenge I have though, and it's the same thing that I had with Lost, is this can't go on forever. Like this story cannot go on forever. And at the end of season 1, I really had no idea like, well, what's going to happen next? Like what is a season 2 even going to look like for 10 episodes? And obviously now I've seen that, and we'll finish that off this weekend. But I'm at the same point now where I'm like, what would a season 3 possibly be? Like, I have no idea. And there's some interesting things they've done with like showing a different park or a couple different parks, I guess. I guess there's other things they could do like that, but it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know what season 3 is. And it took them they had to take a whole year off, right? Between season 1 and 2. And I believe a lot of that is just, that's how long it was going to take to line out where this was going next, right? Like,
that's normal though for HBO shows, though, right?
I mean, it's kind of normal. I guess Game of Thrones has done that to some degree. I mean, True Detective is kind of similar too, but that's different. Like that's an anthology. It's not really a series. Yeah. And
I don't know. I think it's normal. Like I think Silicon Valley was like summer to summer to
summer is it?
To summer. Yeah, I think that's just normal.
Well, but this was they took a whole year off before it came back this year, because it originally aired in 2016. Is
that right?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Maybe I'm wrong. It felt like they took a whole, maybe it was more like, I don't know. I felt like they took more than a year off. Maybe it just felt that way because I was so ready for season 2. Also, you brought up The Walking Dead. This is your fault. You got to watch Fear the Walking Dead, man.
Okay.
This last season, well, it's not the last season. Season 4, it's the first
Most recent
half.
season.
Yeah, it's still going, but they just, you know how they do, they break it up in halves. It's wild, man. It's just like a completely different show. So if you didn't like Fear the Walking Dead, you might like it now. Is what I'm trying to say.
I liked it. I watched the first season, and there wasn't a great way to watch it. Before we had Hulu,
Yeah, because it was on Hulu.
I was
wasn't
getting it
Yeah.
off just like xyzmovie.info and just kind of sketchy sites that I could find it on. And so, I mean, you know, if I could have a better quality, easier to access, like I think it's on Hulu now.
Yeah.
That's definitely doable. Hulu does show a lot of ads though.
They do. And the same ads over and over again. I can't tell you how many times last night, I can't even remember the ad. That's how effective it was. But whatever it was every single break they were playing that ad.
I don't mind the Realtor ads. I'll be honest about those. Those aren't the worst. They aren't like packed. They don't feel like a car commercial or anything.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Car salesman commercial. The Realtor commercial where you have the girl that's running around her brother and jumping around the kitchen, the living room, the open concept. And it's like, I think I need 2,000 square feet. And she just keeps running around. It's like, maybe 2,500. And then right after that, the ad plays with the lady who's like, I want a 2-car garage. And she's in like her big greenhouse to like tear it down. You don't see these?
Nothing, man.
Interesting.
I guess they think you're in the market for a home.
Have you watched The Handmaid's Tale?
No.
Okay. But we see these with Brooklyn Nine-Nine anyways, but which you have watched.
By the way, yeah, we're going through that every night.
We just finished the last episode. I haven't really seen all of them.
Same here.
Blair
yeah.
watched a lot of
Brittany
them.
watches them, and I'm just kind of
I see the ones I see.
Tentatively there.
Yes. Did you finish the last season?
No, I think we're on the last season though, so we're about to be through it. The episode we watched last night was the Halloween heist where he proposes to Amy. I'm assuming that's the last season. I don't even really know.
Sounds like it could be.
Jason Mantzoukas has been a guest star, and I love me some Jason Mantzoukas from How Did This Get Made? So anytime he pops up, which he pops up on a lot of shows because that's him, man. He's just like, little comedy actor. That sounds bad. He's hilarious, but he was especially funny on the show because he just got to fly that crazy flag as high as he could. All we're saying is if you never watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, shame on you because it almost got canceled. You should go watch it on Hulu. And now it's going to be back on it.
You didn't watch it before it almost got canceled.
I watched the first season. Okay.
That's even worse.
That was enough.
They thought you weren't interested anymore, so they were like, well.
I have a really hard time with 30-minute comedies now. I don't know why. I don't.
You watch The Good Place?
Mm-hmm.
You should watch The Good Place.
I just feel
Speaking of good old Michael Shore.
Nothing is ever going to speak to me like The Office did.
It's true.
And so it's hard it's hard to give my heart to another.
You don't have to give your heart to it.
But you heard me earlier talk about the despair I felt at the realization that Han and Leia failed and were doomed. And you're saying you're not expecting me to do that with any, entertaining medium that I give my eyes upon.
You could just watch it, enjoy it.
No.
Invest.
No.
You don't have to, you don't have to get divorced.
Well, then what's the point?
I mean, you could watch, the first X number of seasons of The Office just over and over again. It's something that happens for us.
I could. Hey, The Office ended in season 7. Can we just all agree on that?
I can agree on that. D'Angelo would obviously disagree. Well, so would Robert California, but
gosh, you just said 3 words that made my stomach turn. Thanks for that, Philip. Thanks a lot.